Welcome to self-discoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Their Story Matters right here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my repeat guest, the fourth time now, is Richard Battle. And I do invite you to go back and listen to all the shows that he's done with me. 4 of them, all of them exquisite shows talking about various subjects. But today we're going to be talking about The Unopened Present, a book for fathers. We've talked about grief and broken hearts. And we've talked about how money can never be a life's treasure, like faith and hope. We've also talked about navigating life's journey and the common uncommon. I invite you to go back and listen to all of those shows. But today it's all about this one, The Unopened Present book. Father's Day has come and gone now, but what about all the other 364 days of the year? Many fathers react differently to the day depending on where they are in their lives. It may be especially difficult for a father who has lost a child. Richard has lost that child. He lost him when he was 9 months old, and like every father, Richard wished to give his son a full life path, possibilities, opportunities, and the future he deserved. He wrote his 6-month-old baby boy a letter sharing 43 truths based on Christian scripture, and just in case he didn't survive, to teach to him. But the unthinkable really did happen, and that changed things. Richard's new book, The Unopened Present, reveals the father's love and the gift left behind, like a life cut short. It expands on the letter Richard wrote many years ago, filled with timeless truths, in short, easy to read lessons, and aid in parents in teaching your younger children and enable the older children to discover the wisdom in these life lessons of their own. And so welcome back to the show again, Richard. It's wonderful to have you here. And the loss of any child is, and it's funny because I had somebody this week and last week with the loss of a child as well. It's something that you get over to a point, but it's something that's going to be with you for life, isn't it?
Well, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me back with you. And the only thing I would comment on from your beautiful introduction is I think, and from what I'm hearing, there's mothers that have loved this book as well. So it's written from a father's perspective, but it's not just for fathers.
Right. No. Or
And
just for,
you're
for parents. I mean, grandparents are children as well, right?
exactly. And it's not a grief book. The
Mm,
messages in this book are uplifting. Surviving Grief by God's Grace was a book on surviving
mm.
grief. And the first lesson that I learned at my son's funeral service, and I wrote about in Surviving Grief by God's Grace, was the impact of a life is more important than its length. And
Yes.
I'm so honored because my son's been gone several years now, but the unopened present adds impact to his life
Mm.
because me writing him that letter years ago, and then the event, the amazing event that happened in June of 22 that spurred taking that letter and creating this beautiful volume. And so that story is uplifting and amazing and very humbling for me in of itself.
Okay, what did happen June of 2022?
Well, what was interesting, and you know, since I've been on with you 3 times before, so my media folks had set up pitches about Father's Day in 2022, and it had to do with the loss of my son, the letter, grieving parents, fatherhood, all of those type things. And one of the interviews I got, and it was a repeat interview as well, was on an Iowa station where they would only book me for 4 minutes at a time. And you know, 4 minutes, you can hardly say 2 sentences and that's over. But
Exactly.
so it was very interesting. We were set up for 4 minutes at 7:39 on a Thursday morning before Father's Day. Well, I had set up to take my truck in for service at 7 a.m. that morning. And I thought, well, I'll do the interview from the service lounge. Well, lo and behold, about 7:30, the service lounge gets crowded. So I look across the breezeway and the sales lounge was empty, and I moved over there. And I set up, the phone rings, and I'm going through my 4 minutes. I hear the door open and somebody walk by, but I didn't pay attention to who it was. And I finish the interview. I get in my truck. I'm driving the hour back to my home. And halfway, the phone rings. I look at it, but I don't recognize the number, so I don't answer it. The next slide, I see there's a voicemail from the dealership. And what's our natural reaction? Oh my gosh, they screwed up something with
Yeah,
my truck.
there's a part missing.
And
Yes.
then I have to go back. And so I called, and a guy answered the phone, and he said, were you the person talking in the sales lounge a few minutes ago? And I said, yes, I was. And he goes, well, I just wanted to call and thank you. Last night, I was hurting so badly, and I prayed to God that he would send someone to give me a message of comfort
Mm.
because I lost my daughter a couple of months ago.
Ah.
And I think that you were sent for this very purpose today.
Hmm.
And you talk about a humbling
Hmm.
event. I was very humbled. I was wondering, wow. And I spent several minutes talking with him, trying to share something that would help him where he was.
Hmm.
But when I left that conversation, I just got to thinking about all the things that had to come together for that 1 4 minute intersection
Yes.
to happen with him overhearing me. He didn't know I was on a radio interview.
Right.
He just thought I was on the phone. The people in Iowa didn't know someone in Texas was benefiting from the radio
Hmm.
interview. And as you well know, a lot of times we wonder if things we say are helpful or not.
Yes.
And this was, so I called the host back in Iowa and let him know what happened about that situation as well. And as I drove home, it just humbled me so
Mm.
much how that happened. And a few days later, when I was talking to a friend of mine who knew about my son and that loss, told him this situation, he says, you need to write a book about that and
Hmm.
expand on those lessons. And
Yes.
so that's what I did. I went back to the original letter. It was 43 lessons. A friend of mine asked me, why 43? And I said, well, that's all I thought of at the time.
I'm
And
sure there
so I
would have been
went
more
back
down the road. Yes.
and added context and examples and quotes and one scripture for each one, trying to make each one of those 43 lessons impactful, whether a young person reads it, a parent, or if a grandparent gives it to a parent for a child. And I've been amazed at how many people are using this
Yeah.
to help raise children because as a young parent, you're so busy thinking about making a salary that
Yeah.
week, buying
Yes.
food for the table, taking care of the kids, all of the short term things you're thinking about, but
Hmm.
you don't think about the long term and the legacy. And when we're raising kids, we're really raising grandkids and great
Hmm.
grandkids because they will take things we teach them and share them with their
Yes.
children. And so the opportunity we have for a legacy is incredible. And I think this volume can help people with what it offers, but it can also help give them the inspiration to create additional things for their family.
Exactly. We all need guidance, and it doesn't matter how turmoil the world gets. And really, let's face it, right now it's pretty upside down, and there's an awful lot of conflict out there. But when it comes down to it, the fundamental of every child's life should be love. The love isn't always enough in the sense that they also need structure. They also need a guidance system. They also need to be taught how to listen to their inner core, their own divinity, their own God, of that guidance system. And the more that we can share that with them in a way that they see is tangible, that makes sense, that they can use over and over again, the more we're actually empowering them to take those steps forward in life with confidence. And that's what a parent's desire is for their child, is that whatever we're imparting to them will make their lives better than our lives. and that
Absolutely.
they will fulfill their lives in a way that was even greater than what we did, and again their children, and so on, because all that knowledge and that wisdom being passed down. So it's important that we do pass these things down. And if you think about it, back in the days before social media or even books or anything else, people got together, over the picket fence or down at the grocery store or in the park, and shared stories. I just had a girlfriend here for the weekend that I've known since her daughter was 9 weeks and my son was 2 weeks old. And we've both had three kids, and both sets of kids are still besties to this day. And she's my bestie. And it's the learning from each other. So and so did this, and so to passing things on, and how important it is to have that. But then to have that kind of in a book as a guidance system. Again, transcending ages, transcending any demographics or any economics or anything else. And in a sense, even though you've quoted scripture, even transcending any one particular faith, right?
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
so it's important to have, because we all need help. And we're not always available now to kind of be there together to give that help. So having something you can read that is that guidance system, and but also a comfort at the same time.
Absolutely. And again, I wrote the letter originally because I recognized at the time I was an older first time father.
Hmm.
And my concern and motivation was that I might not live long enough to teach my son these lessons. And so the second lesson is love your mother,
Yeah.
honor and respect her because she loves you above anything else. And when I would leave the house when my son was an infant and then later my daughter, I would always tell them,
Mhm.
okay, you're the man of the house. It's your responsibility to take care of your mother, love your mother. And even though they were young at the time, I wanted to ingrain that responsibility of the family above and beyond all other
Yes.
relationships.
It's the
And we see so many broken
ah
families now
way
and
too
so
much.
much crime
Yeah.
and problems that come from broken families. And that's why if we can supplement where there's not a two-parent household and supplement with things that can help in that process, that's part of the thing that I hope we can help with.
I mean, we have absentee fathers, but we also have fathers that are absent because they're serving, or their
Yes.
job requires them to travel, and they're not there all the time. They're not, hands-on all the time, and we have to adapt. We've also got it where, the women have become the breadwinners, and the men have decided to stay home. Whatever our families look like today, as I said, the foundation is that love, and that divine love and trust. That is our core compass that guides us. But everything else is a lot of it is just simple common sense, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
that the respect of your parents, they may be flawed, they may make mistakes, but the love of who they are and what they're doing for you is coming based on the knowledge that they have and how they feel about you. And if they do make mistakes, don't persecute them for it, because they're still learning as well. Just as you're learning in life, we're learning in life. And it's the the ability to have that conversation. I think that's something we don't talk about in families. It has been the hierarchy, the parent and the child. But I think when we give the permission for the child to inquire, to have a conversation, to open up without feeling they're going to get chastised or that it's inappropriate or whatever, it opens up that trust of that communication, which allows then that confidence to come forth.
Yes, absolutely. And you're right. These lessons are full of common sense.
Mm.
And some people will look at them and say, well, everybody should know that. Well,
Mm.
that's true. But unless you teach someone,
Yeah.
they don't understand it.
Yes.
And kids need to know why to do something, even more importantly than how.
Yes.
And so I'll give this humor and then give an example. So, guy comes home from work one day and his wife's making dinner and he's talking to her about their days and everything. And all of a sudden, she pulls this meat cleaver out and she chops into this roast off and throws it in the pan and sticks it in the oven. And he said, well, honey, why'd you cut the end of the roast off? And she said, well, I don't know. Mama always did it that way.
Yeah.
And said, well, let's call mama. So they call mama and ask her the question. Well, grandma always did it that way. So they call grandma, tell her the story. Grandma, why'd you cut the end of the roast off? She goes, because it wouldn't fit in the pan. And so one of the things that happens in life is we have a habit of forgetting
Yes,
why and to teach why.
yes,
And it's
yes.
very important for us to teach why before how
Mm.
so people understand it and accept. And so that's another thing here. And I'll give you a simple example. One of the lessons in here is about saying please and thank you.
Yo, big one.
And how easy it is for people not to say please or
Yes.
thank you. And it was funny one day I was on another show and we were talking about that. And I just made the offhand comment about I never had a bad experience saying thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And the host said, well, that'd be a good quote. And it's so true.
Yes,
How can you have a bad experience saying thank you?
exactly.
And then on the other side, I had a dear friend who was killed in a car wreck a couple of years ago. And he was a great example to me because every time we communicated, he always asked, is there anything I can do for you today?
Exactly.
And he meant it. It
Yeah.
wasn't just one of those
Flippant
courtesy
things. Mm-hmm.
type things. He meant it. And to me, that was a great example. And so I used that in there as an example that I hope other people will pick up because if people do that, there's going to be more of that love, as you say,
Yes.
given from one person to the other, and people will help each other more and relationships will be closer.
I want to stick with please and thank you for a moment because it's become so flippant. Like I acknowledge if I stop and let somebody come out of the side road and go in front of me or somebody crossing the street, I always just make eye contact and raise my hand. Thank you. Right? Simple thing. And what it is acknowledgement and respect. And I think one of the things that we're not teaching our kids is what respect is. They think it's in the hood. No, no, man. You know, respect is gratitude for somebody doing something for you, big or small, right? And when we live from a space of gratitude, we don't take things for granted. And that every single please or thank you is a recognition of you and what you're doing and is a respect of the person that you may be asking something from. And I think without that foundation there is that we have become flippant. I'm very much about eye contact, which I know many cultures aren't. But I'm sorry if you're scared of me looking at you. I can't do anything about that because I'm going to look, and if I have to mouth thank you or just say thank you or whatever, I feel it's saying to somebody, I see you and I recognize what it is you're doing and I appreciate it. And it's simple gesture of thank you or even the please is a respect. Do you mind putting yourself out for me to do this? Right. And I think when we forget that, we become complacent and take things for granted. And then I think we're stepping into a place of lack.
You're exactly correct. I think you read that lesson already because I go through please and thank you. And being in Texas, we wave when we
Hmm.
see people on the road and we use all five fingers most of
Yes,
the
not the
time.
one, folks.
And another thing that we'll say yes, sir, and yes,
Yes,
ma'am, or no, ma'am.
I get that a
And
lot when I
it doesn't
interview and
matter.
kind
You don't
of,
say it to someone based on their age.
yes.
I say yes, ma'am, to ladies younger than me quite
Mm,
often, or yes, sir, to men. It's a sign of respect,
yes.
as you say. And that to me, it's just creating that civility
Yeah.
for communications and respect. And when you do that, it's amazing how fast it'll fall off. People's facades will fall off,
Yes.
and most often they'll come back and be more friendly to you as well.
The guard
And
has
it is
dropped, right?
yes, yes.
I mean, because we've been so taught now to be on guard. What does this person want from me? Is this person going to do this to me? Is this person that? And this is some sort of part media, part social media, part the climate that we're in is that we know that fear sells and we know that fear is a form of control. And we know that when we keep people in fear, we can manipulate them in any way. But it's up to us to choose what we're fearful over. And if we are in that state of being of, I don't look at you as the enemy, right? We're not going to see the enemy. But that doesn't mean there aren't enemies out there or that there aren't enemies, quote, quote, in sheep's clothing, right? But it means that we're not going to treat everybody mistrust. I mean, by doing that, we're doing ourselves a disservice. We're doing ourselves a disservice of connection. We're doing a disservice of creativity. We're doing ourselves a disservice to our own presence here. So I think that mutual respect, using that common sense, opening up to conversations, and not being fearful of it is something that's really important.
Well, and a corollary to all of that, one of the lessons was you're no better or no worse than anyone else.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's a very simple thing,
Hmm.
but it goes back to we're all God's creatures.
Hmm.
There are things that you're better at than I am. I hope there might be a thing or two I'm better at than you are. But
Exactly.
that collaborative
Yes.
opportunity for us to put our gifts together to add, it's called synergy. The
Yes.
sum is greater than the total of the parts.
Yes.
And that's the opportunity we have when we take each other's talents
Yeah.
and use them to help each other. And I look at governments
Hmm.
trying to make everyone equal, and I don't care who the government is or how much money they threw at it, they can't make us all equal. And I tell people, I think I'm the only person I know that was asked to lip sync in the second grade Christmas pageant. Because I cannot sing, I cannot do anything musical. And it doesn't matter how much money's thrown at me, I
Right.
can't do it.
Right.
It's not my
Exactly.
gift.
Yes.
And so recognizing that and accepting that
Hmm.
helps us to focus on what are our gifts and who can we go out to get us to help the things that we can't do to contribute to our mutual success.
Every single one of us is an instrument. And it's up to us to know what instrument we are, how to play it. And yes, we can be solo, but it's finding that orchestra to join, where in each and every one of our strengths, we can come together in harmony. That piece transcends and ascends the spirits of those around us. We are greater in numbers, but we're only greater in numbers if we bring our whole to the platform.
Yes, and I tell people the simplest analogy I know is if you have more than one child, you usually try to raise them the same, but
Mhm.
I guarantee you they're all individuals, no
Oh,
matter if they're raised
yes.
the same or not. And that's the
Yes.
simplest analogy, and that's why I can't believe anyone in a government would try to say we can make you all the same.
But but also again, isn't that again a form of control by keeping everybody, they don't want individualism because that's harder to herd, right?
Yes,
They
yes,
um when we have a mind of our own, that it's not just the mind, it's actually when the spirit and the soul and the heart of us has stepped into presence, our mind is clear on who we are and what we're here to do. But it all comes through, the divine wisdom connecting with our heart and truth, going to our spirit into action, and our mind knowing what it needs to know when it needs to know it. And that is when we say, clear-minded. The clear-minded is because we've encompassed the spirit and the soul teachings. We've encompassed all of that. So we know why that knowledge is relevant in that moment. And that's where that strength and that clarity is. But it isn't just from the mind first, because the mind is confused. It needs the clarity to actually understand what it needs to know.
yes. I'd like to digress for a minute, if I may, to add the reason why all of these things are so critical. And I wrote an essay in the previous book, Made in America by Americans, Not Americans,
Yes.
entitled 100 Years from Now, What Difference Will It Make?
Right.
And when I was a kid, my dad, when he'd go for the second piece of pie after dinner, he'd say, "What difference will it make 100 years from now if I have a second piece of pie?" And we'd all laugh. And something came together recently that just really struck me. I inherited a table that had been in my family from my great great grandmother. And it's this beautiful wood table with about a 30 by 20-inch marble top on it that must weigh 30 pounds. And my mother had always told me stories about how my great great grandmother served milk and cookies to my great grandmother and her little friends when she was a teenager. And my great grandmother lived till I was 9 years old. And so I had a relationship with her.
Yeah.
But being the normal Texas boy at that time, 100% went in this ear and 99.9% went out this ear. And so I didn't really think a whole lot about what that meant.
Yeah.
And so after my mother passed, I found a picture of my great grandmother when she was about 14 or 15 years old. Beautiful picture. And my mother had also told me that the trend in those days was to have autograph books.
Hmm.
And when friends would visit you at your house, they would sign your autograph book on their
Yeah.
friendship.
Yes.
And so I found the autograph book
Mm.
from that time. And the autographs in there were from 1884.
Yeah.
And so here's the connection. My great great grandmother was an influencer, to use today's terms,
Hmm.
because when she served milk and cookies, she was serving life lessons, even though they didn't know it.
Right.
And so after that, my great grandmother, grandmother, mother,
Hmm.
and me and my daughter now all had lessons over that table.
Yes.
And I tell people that table to me is a physical manifestation of that lesson. But I guarantee you, everyone else in your audience has an experience like
Yep.
that, whether they have a physical manifestation or not. And so that's why it's so important when we talk about these things, because everything we do is going to affect someone else
Yeah.
100 years from today or beyond. And
Yeah.
when we think like that,
Yes.
our behavior changes
Hmm.
and our decisions change and our impact change.
Some people would call it legacy, the legacy that
Yes.
you leave behind, right? And it's like, you know, I've always said that when I pass, I want people to remember me fondly for who I am, but also to look at what I contributed. And did I contribute something of value? Did I
Yes.
contribute something that transcends my death, that keeps on going? And did I have an impact on somebody that was beneficial? And that's all I want to know,
Yeah.
right? Because then I feel life served well. I've left an impact. It doesn't have to be big or big bell whistles or carved in stone. It's just that whose life did I affect for the better? Now, one may never know, but then, life has a way of kind of presenting itself like somebody crossing the room while you're on the phone, or somebody talking and then somebody saying, I know that person. Or I get it now and again when I talk about my shows and people say, I heard that show, all right, or I had that impact with that show. And you just don't know. Don't do it for adulation. Don't do it for the praise. Whatever you're doing in life, do it because it's something meaningful to you, something that you want to pass on because you really see the benefit of it and how it will serve others. And I think that's kind of the greatest gift that you can actually share people. It's a piece of yourself.
Well, absolutely. And here's the other side of that story. I inherited a piece of property from that great great grandmother and grandfather. They bought in 1854. And
For
so,
how
but
much?
I have nothing. I have nothing. I don't have any letters that they wrote. I don't have
Right,
anything to really show what their personality was or what
right.
they believed. And so I encourage people,
Yes,
sit down, go visit grandma,
yes,
record a conversation,
yes.
write a letter, do things to let people know what you think and believe, and leave that behind, because it may not be your kids today. It may not be their kids, but
Right.
it may be their grandkids someday may be interested in knowing some of that. And you may have even a further opportunity to touch them.
There's two things I'm going to reply to that. One, I have somebody on this week, and it's about right journeys. It's about writing your journey. It's
Yeah.
about writing it as it being an inspiration for somebody else on their journey of life, because you have absolutely no idea that something you might feel is rather mundane or maybe even a bit boring, how it could be impactful on somebody else's journey, whether it's family or whether it's someone else. It Our stories aren't for us to judge. Oh, it's not good enough, or it's not this enough. Our stories are going to relate to someone else. I see you, I hear you, I feel you. I can see things differently because of
Yes.
it. That's the importance of the story. But there was another side of it, which now I've forgotten, which will come up in a moment. But
That's okay. I'll pick up and cover you. So,
yes,
so
yes,
one of
yes.
the lessons that I had in there was from my dad, and the title was "Can't Never Did Anything."
Mm,
And when I was a boy, young boy, my dad would be teaching me something, and I would get frustrated and want to quit. I'd say, I can't do that.
Yes.
And that fast, he'd say, can't never did anything. And so it caused me to persevere until I could overcome and achieve whatever it was he was teaching.
Yeah.
And it put that attitude and spirit inside of me. And I wanted to make sure my son had that as
Yeah.
well. And now sharing it, I believe it's something that can help others, because you can't accomplish anything positive with a negative attitude.
Right.
And a positive
And
attitude is the predicate.
I look at it this way. There are some things I know I simply can't do. Not possible. Like you can't sing. There's things I
Yes.
can't do. But the thing is don't dwell on what you can't do. Investigate what you can do. Explore what you
Yes.
can do. Because again, we're not one size fits all. Every single one of us is a different chocolate in the box of chocolates of life, right? And also everybody that's going to take a bite of that chocolate is going to experience it in a different way. So, again, stepping into your instrument, stepping into what you can do. But when the heart and the passion and the soul is behind what you do, that is what makes you extraordinary. That really makes what your contribution is. Just because so and so did that, well, your father did that, so you should be able to. No, my father was my father. He could do what he could do. I can take a piece, I can take the influence of his courage. I can take the awe of what he did do. I can't do that, but I can take that same inspiration and apply it to something I can do.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And so, one of the other lessons we had in there, it's talking about greed, but I put it in a way where you don't use the word greed. And
Right.
it was, just because somebody has something you don't have means they're rich.
Mhm.
And early in my career, I invested in some rental real estate property to try to build financial independence. And I had a tenant who wanted me to put a screen door on a duplex so she could look out in the driveway and watch her grandson play. And here I'm scraping together everything I can to make the payments every month and
Right.
collect the rent and do all these things. And 2 weeks later, I went by to collect the rent, and the screen door had already been torn off the
Oh,
hinges.
oh no.
And I said, "What happened?" She said, "Well, her grandson and friends broke it." And she didn't care a bit about me. She wanted me to replace that door immediately. And I was trying to relate to her that here I was, this poor, struggling young business guy, and I wasn't making any money, but she didn't care. She
Right.
perceived I was rich because
Yes.
I was the person that took her rent.
Right.
And she had that perception of a difference of rich versus where she was.
Right.
And so part of the thing I think we have to learn, sometimes people have something we don't, and they don't own it, the bank owns it.
Yes.
But even
Yes.
if they do own it, doesn't mean that they're rich. And then I had a corollary lesson, which is, even if they are rich, doesn't mean we have the right to abuse them
Right.
or mistreat them,
This
because we will
oh,
interact with people who have more things than we have. And we need
guaranteed.
to do it from an equal basis, not envy or inferiority.
But also don't assume. There are very, very many
Yes,
rich people that are very either morally or spiritually poor,
yes.
right? And so again, you could have somebody that is considered financially poor, but is abundant in the enrichment of their spirit.
Yes, absolutely. I use the example to counter that in the It's a Wonderful Life movie with
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Stewart,
Yes.
because all through the movie, he appeared to be the poorest man in town.
Right.
But when things really came at the very end,
Uh-huh.
he discovered he was the richest man in town.
Yes.
And to me,
And nothing to
that's
do
the
with money.
lesson. No, the exact
Yeah.
opposite.
Yeah.
He was rich in friends, and his
Yes.
friends could help him when he had a need
Yeah.
because he had helped them over and over and over again. And
Exactly.
to me, the story of that and the message of that is even more needed today than when that movie was first put out.
Exactly, which was what, 60, 70 years ago. I mean, God knows
Yes.
it's it. But but that again then shows how lessons aren't just for today. So you put, grandchildren, great grandchildren, everything else. When it's a good lesson, when it's a good common sense foundational lesson, it transcends time.
I'm
It
a,
transcends situations.
I want to read something for you that
Yep.
I added during the proof stage of the book. And I discovered it on a 1941 movie called The Mortal Storm. And it
Mm-hmm.
was about this family in Austria and getting ready for the impending invasion and Hitler taking over Europe and everything.
Right.
And they had this excerpt of a poem at the end of the movie. This poem was written in 1908 and published in 1912. And so here I discover it watching in 2022 when I'm
Right.
working on this book. And I finished, this is the last piece of the book, so I'm going to read it. It says, The Gate of the Year. And the title of the original poem was God Knows. And it says, And I said to the man who stood at the gate of the year, Give me a light that I may tread safely into the unknown. And he replied, Go out into the darkness and put your hand into the hand of God. That shall be to you better than light and safer than a known way. So I went forth and finding the hand of God, trod gladly into the night. And he led me toward the hills and the breaking of day in the lone east. And that was such a beautiful
Mm.
expression of love and how all the things that happen are connected
Yeah.
and the lessons in one generation connected to another, our responsibility to bring up the generations following us
Yeah.
and gift them a life better than we were gifted.
Yeah. I kind of look at it, it's this way. I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm not afraid of the unknown, for I am the light in the darkness because God is within me. We are never alone, although
No,
sometimes we feel lonely. I think the loneliness comes about more from the lack of human connection than it ever does from God connection. When you connect with
yes,
God,
yes,
Gus, universe, spirit, whatever you wish to call it, when we have that divine connection, it is the core of you. This part of my core that when somebody says, do this, do that, my core says, no, I'm not going to question it. I'm not going to doubt it. It is that compass that says, no, that's not for you. But then there are other times where it says, go for it. You don't
yes,
know where you're going. You don't know where it's going to lead you. You don't know what's going to happen, but I've got you. I'm that
yes,
light on your journey. I've got you. And you take that journey in wonderment, in excitement, even
yes,
in a little trepidation. But at the same time, you know you're safe because you're
yes.
not traveling alone.
That's exactly true. And I've been touched so many times and awed, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I was two-thirds of the way finished with another book when the idea for the unopened present was born, if you
Mm.
will. And so I put it aside, totally focused on the unopened present, thinking I would return to that project. And before Unopened Present was published, I was inspired with another work that I'm now working on. And so that other one is two-thirds done, and I hope I'll finish it someday. But yes,
It,
so when
it
that
will be when it's
inspiration,
meant to be, when it's apropos.
exactly,
That's the
that's
thing is that,
exactly right.
sometimes, well, no, 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 you can't start another book. You haven't finished this one yet. What are you? And it's like, no, if it's not its time and something
Yes,
else is speaking to you louder, that doesn't mean that that is forsaken. It just means it's the wrong time for it to go out, and there's something that is more pressing that needs to be heard.
absolutely. But what's ironic for my business career in the corporate life, you'd set the goal, put the blinders on,
Yeah.
run toward the goal until you hit it. And so there were so many times I was so busy, and I'm saying this and fessing up, if you will, because there's other people out there I hope will hear it. I was so busy that I missed those inspirational inputs.
Yes. Yes.
And who knows what I didn't do that might have been better than what I did do.
Yeah.
And after I left corporate life and focused on speaking and writing and things of that nature, I'm much more in tune,
Mm.
and I've been caught, I mean, in so many different places at so many different times of the day with just ideas and input.
It's lovely, isn't it?
It's
Because you're
unbelievable.
present. It's because you're present. It's that,
Yes.
I said I used to be the hair. kind of rushing to the finish line. I've always been a visionist, so I've always been able to see things in completion. But for me, it's like you're building a hotel. I can see every room and how it's decorated and how people are going to feel in it and what they're going to feel when they walk into the hotel. I'm already there, right? So I'm at that finish line with it, but I'm not the
Yeah,
constructor, I'm not the builder, I'm not the
yeah,
everything else. And it was always the impatience of wanting everybody else to see it so we could build it. I've become the
yes.
tortoise. I'm enjoying being the tortoise because as the tortoise, as I'm plodding along, I'm meeting this leaf, I'm meeting that worm, I'm meeting this, I'm meeting that. And it's beautiful because I'm taking in all those wonderful, precious lessons and inspirations and joys along the way. And I realized this, I'm never going to reach my finish line until the day I exit this body, right?
Exactly,
But it's throughout the
exactly.
journey, and I'm enjoying the journey because I'm taking my time with the journey. I'm being present with the journey.
Funny you mentioned the word present because the unopened
Right.
present has a double meaning.
Hmm.
My son was never able to open the present of the letter,
Right.
and he had limited present days.
Yes.
But tomorrow is an unopened present to
Mm.
us. When it
Yeah.
gets here, it will be a present to us for
Yes.
us to use to help others.
Yes.
And so that's the opportunity I hope people will see is that the lessons in here are presents that can be used every present day of a lifetime.
The gift of the present is in the now.
Yes.
What is present and presence? It means being present with
Yes.
self in your own presence, in the surroundings that you're in right now. And then we're so busy chasing. We're so busy dictating. We're so busy following everybody else. And we don't realize the gift is with us every single day if we are present, if
And
we
that's
are in
why I
our
chose the
presence.
word present
Mm.
versus gift
Yes.
entitling
Yeah.
because gift does not have the same
No.
multi-use or connotation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it makes it almost difficult because we'll be presented a present tomorrow. So there's a double use of the word
Yes.
present in one sentence.
But
So that
there's never any one explanation for one thing because again, there's
no,
that wonderful, drawing of somebody looking at these logs, and from this angle, the person can only see three, and from the other angle, the person can see four. They are both right. It's just perception.
yes,
And if we're willing to change angles in life, we're going to see things from other points of view. There is no one size fits all. There's no one thought that fits all. There's no one divine that fits all. It's got to be what fits you, and you're open to receive and be present and listen and learn from others' perceptions because that's part of our growth.
that goes back to when we mentioned why earlier and asking people when they say something. I like to ask why. Why do you think that?
Mm.
And do it in a way that's not demeaning or attacking or negative. I want to learn what someone thinks and why.
Yes,
Because that is the way I may be educated. They may be thinking something better than I am
yes.
if I don't understand and think something differently. But if
Hmm.
I don't listen
Yeah,
fully, why, then I can't be open to that. Now, I may listen to it and disagree with it afterwards, but that's
exactly.
okay.
Yes.
And
That
it
doesn't
used to
mean
be,
hate rhetoric has to come up. It's just you're seeing it from a different point of view. It doesn't
yeah,
relate to you in that
exactly.
way.
And it used to be in our lives that people would openly discuss things, debate in
Yeah,
certain environments, and they would vote, and some would agree, some would disagree. Then people would put that decision behind and then move on.
yeah,
And there wasn't the personal animosity or anything because
yeah.
we recognized that we're better if all ideas are open and listened to, and you come up with the best decision.
I think we were more intelligent back then. Now everything has become mudslinging, one-upmanship. Let's put you down to put myself up. And that is not what a debate is. That's not what a conversation is. You may disagree, but why do you disagree? Because I see it from that point of view. Okay, I see that, but I see it from this point of view. Okay, I can't see it from your point of view. Okay, then we can agree to disagree. But that doesn't mean the hate rhetoric or the machete needs to come out.
Well, I think you hit on a raw nerve with me. I believe that our forefathers were more intelligent. We
Mm,
can read
Hmm.
Back in the founding of the United States, and I'm sure the same thing in Canada, we can see books written. We can
Yes.
see movies from 50, 60,
Mm.
70 years ago. The dialogue, the
Yes.
language,
Yes.
the dignity, the
Mm.
dress,
Yeah.
the architectural
Yes.
designs. There was so much more creativity and intelligence, I
Yeah.
think. And instead of raising the bar,
Yeah.
we're allowing the bar to be lowered to the lowest common denominator to
We're
make
dumbing it
some
down.
people feel
Mm.
good.
Yeah.
And it's a very sad thing to see that, because I tell people, I have friends that barely got out of high school years ago that are much more intelligent than people that are getting master's and doctorate degrees today
Yes.
who think they're smart.
Right. And I am British born. And so and I think whereas America does variety very, very well. British did drama. We still do drama very well. And especially if we're doing period pieces or anything along that line, we do it very, very well. And I think it is when we are revealing the story and we're leaving people in inquiry and we're articulating, and what we're doing is we're playing to people's both divine and physical intellect, right? It's we're engaging them. And what we're seeing now is, and we were talking about this just the other day, is how you can watch a movie today and the music is so loud to overpower the voices that all you hear is blah, 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 and it's what did they say? And, and it feels like, oh God, I'm getting old, I'm deaf. But how come I can hear something on another show where I can hear every single word? And it says, is it the dialogue is so bad and it's all about the action? And where's the engagement in that?
Well, and it mirrors our culture
Yeah.
today because the attention span is so short
Mm.
with people. And
The
people
depth.
who went to the movies in the 30s and 40s, read the books then, for example, the
Yeah.
dialogue and the language was deeper,
Yeah.
much deeper. And
Yes.
it made people think
Yeah.
through there. It made them visualize and experience the event differently
Yeah.
versus the surface and shallowness of what we are presented today.
But we also see so many. I mean, I love a good murder mystery. I love a good thriller, and I don't mind kind of the shoot it type movies when it's in the proper context. But when it just becomes brrrr and everybody's dead, it is like, A, it shows the zero value of life, zero anybody's
Yes.
dispensable, and it just like I think it's demeaning to ourselves as human beings, where if the only way to find a solution to something, I'll tell you a story. My ex-husband was an actor. He's Chinese, and he was doing a movie, and he was playing a ninja. And it was it not John Van Damme? I can't remember the actor. Anyway, a very white actor, and he's on the bullet train, the Japanese bullet train, and these assassins are trying to get to him. Well, they kill everybody to get to him. Everybody else is Oriental. He's the only white guy. I just, what? You know,
Yeah.
and who is that playing to? Is it just the need for us all to annihilate each other? Wouldn't it have been better, especially as kind of ninjas were considered elite, that they use, their skills and their things to suss him out? And it's like that irritated the hell out of me. And it still does when you see that. I like a good whodunit. I like a reason. If there is violence, then there's got to be a reason for it, but not just a brrr, you know, everybody's dead and the hero is there. And what kind of hero are you?
Well, yeah, and the better story would have been, as you said, to go through a process of
Yeah,
deduction
yeah,
and trying to figure out how to lure him out into the open
yes,
and only take him out or arrest
exactly.
him or something versus what happened. And we
Yeah,
see that. We see the contrast between in America, you'll see Asians and you'll see Indian families and children
hmm,
achieve much higher scores
Yeah.
because their families are much more disciplined and parent much more like I think most of the parents did years ago.
Hmm.
And they don't succumb to the current culture as much. And I think our culture and our political classes are pushing this lower
Yeah.
educated and lower thinking population versus the people who don't fall for that. We see homeschooling in the United States rising, and
Mm.
those people have superior achievement and scores versus public schooling as well because they refuse to accept dumbing down children and they
Yeah.
want to raise the bar, and that's what we all should want to do.
You're right. We're teaching thuggism. We really are inciting thuggism. And I think this is, I drive to my daughter's every couple of weeks, and it's a lovely route, but I get these trucks behind me. And I'm not talking about big trucks, just the truck type things. And there's a mentality around it that they're up my backside and they're aggressive to get me to move over, and I'm going at a good speed. And then I move over and I say, come on down, and off they go. And then I go up behind them, and then they just slow down. Right? It's all about the power. I've got the truck, I'm the big thing. And it's like, no, that doesn't make you any more important. And I think this is something that what we've done is we've empowered the wrong thing. Now, not everybody needs a degree. Not everybody needs to be highly intelligent. There are some incredible, creative, and wonderfully skilled people doing something else that isn't the academics, because not everything is academics, but they're productive. They are contributors. They are people that are serving each other in this world. They're not there going, where's me rights, me rights, me rights. I'm owed. And I hate the word entitlement. Nobody is entitled. Every single one of us has to work for something. We have to deserve it because we've worked for it, not because we think I'm white and I'm entitled.
Well, the American experiment in the United States was based on self government, equal justice under law, and that required an educated population, at least in the basics, with civics and history and common sense. And I would trust, like the late William F. Buckley, I like the way he said it. He said he'd trust the first 535 people in the New York phone book more than he would Congress. And I think that's so true. I would trust a plumber, an electrician, a
Yes.
builder, any person that had been out in the real world and done
Yep.
something
Mm.
versus any career politician, regardless of party,
Right.
because they have no real world experience. And people that have real world experience and common sense, to me, make better decisions as representatives in an elected body. And for the
And
United States,
represent the people,
yes,
rather, because it ends up with the politicians. We're working for the politicians. You're a public servant. You're
well,
working for us.
that's the ruler mentality.
Right.
And
Yes.
the career politicians in the United States, as an example, have gone to that much more so in the last several years versus the public servant mentality.
Yes.
And no one at the time our country was founded ever dreamed someone
Right.
would want to spend a career at the Capitol because no one could afford to. But they've made it to where they can enrich themselves in power and money to do so
Or
and
buy the
created
position.
a profession.
Yes.
Yes.
And that
And
should not be,
so,
it's not on merit. It's
and,
it's on who they can bribe and who they can buy.
and so they want we citizens to, hey, trust us, we'll take care of you. You don't have to worry about the important things. We'll take care of it. You can go watch the movies and pursue pleasure. Leave it to us. And that's what gets us as a people in trouble
Yeah.
when we don't and
Yes.
we aren't able to be representative of our fellow citizens.
I always say, people say to me, I'm only one person. What can I do? You change your life. You are now a part of the equation of solution, right? We have a world that is in dire straits uh, environmentally. We have the ability to change that. We have the ability to start serving our planet that's been serving us for so long instead of just taking it for granted and being gluttonous as we have been. We have the ability to actually obliterate wars. by actually conversing with one another and respecting each other's differences and finding a common ground instead of taking up the arms. We have the ability as individuals to change our own lives for the better, where we can step in service of one another fruitfully, abundantly, enrichingly. But it's up to us if we're going to participate in our own life, if we're going to invest in our own life, if we're going to do the work to empower our own life. It is up to each and every one of us. But imagine if each and every one of us did, what kind of world we'd be living in.
Well, absolutely. And again, the culture and the political class want to discourage us.
Mm.
Leave it to us. Don't worry about it.
Mm-mm.
And people look at it and they're frustrated and they say, I can't do anything.
Right.
And so the premise I always state is none of us can do everything, but we can all do one thing.
Yeah.
And if we get enough people to do one thing
Yes.
more, then it
Yes.
will make a huge difference. And
Going
it could
back
be
to
as
simple as please and thank you. It
well,
could be as simple as
encouragements
encouragement.
is one of the ones that I tell people encouragement's the greatest gift we can
Yes,
give to anyone. And I
exactly.
challenge people try to encourage at least one person per day.
Yeah.
And if you'll encourage one person per day, I guarantee you, you're going to change the world.
The other thing is acknowledgement. How many people are unseen? See them. See them. You don't know what an impact it is for you to say, hi, how are you today? Right? For that person, it's like nobody's seeing, nobody's noticing, nobody cares, but you've just paid attention to them. In that is the empowerment that they feel seen. Well, if you've seen me today, can I be seen tomorrow? What do I need to do to be seen? But we've gone so much with the blinkers of me, myself, and I. Right? And I call it the Gollum thing. I don't know if you've ever seen Lord of the Rings with Gollum and the ring,
Yeah.
Gollum, Gollum, my precious, and we've seen it with the political thing in the last few years and even where it's going right now in certain parties. It's all about me, myself, and I don't give a dash about anybody else as long as my agenda is met. If we don't want them to have the power, A, don't vote for them. B, step up and be the solution and show them how it's done because they're not going to get it done.
Well, and you mentioned being seen, and one of the examples I use in the Unopened present, my first job out of college, everybody treated me well, regardless of where they were on the pecking order in the company, except one guy who was a service manager above me. He wasn't above me directly, indirectly. I was just a poor little sales guy, and he was a manager in service. Well, all of a sudden, one day, I got promoted, and it was amazing. It was amazing, pardon me, it was amazing how much better he treated me once I went into management versus how he treated me before. And so the lesson I shared was you treat people well because you never know when the people who are below you today will be above you tomorrow.
Right. But you
And so
should
if
just
you,
treat people well. I mean, I drew the analogy of the CEO and the janitor. You walk into the building of this big corporation and you're going up the elevator to the penthouse to see the CEO. If it's dirty and tardy and sticky knobs and all of that along the way, your impression of the CEO has changed. So who sets the stage for you? Who has laid everything out for that first impression? The janitor. So who is important? The janitor is important because nobody
absolutely
even wants to
everybody.
get up to the penthouse to see you if it's that yucky.
Yeah. Everybody's important. Everybody contributes.
Exactly.
One missing contributor to the team affects the whole team.
Yes.
And that goes back to the why we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And leaders in companies and organizations have to make people realize the importance of each individual's contributions to the team.
Yes.
And if you don't do that, you will never get the efficiency out of the team, whether
Right.
it's a Girl Scout troop, a Little League team, a company, American Cancer Society, whatever team it is of people working together, every person's contributions are critical.
That is the way it's meant to be. We're all contributors, every single one of us. In the orchestra, you may have the soloists. That just means they've got more responsibility. The triangle may not be in every piece, but the pieces in, it's important. And that
Yes,
doesn't make them any
absolutely.
less important because they're not in every piece.
Well, you just hit me because the only musical instrument I can play is the AM radio, so I had to think twice what the triangle was.
The thing is about what you've written here, going back to the common sense, the fundamentals, the grounded rules. If we can teach our children those common basics, and not just to know them, but how to use them,
Yes,
it is something that they use unconsciously through their lives.
yes,
All right. And so what they're building is substance of their life. They're
yes,
extending that substance of who they are out to others because of that consideration, that respect, that sense of value, that appreciation and gratitude, all of those fundamentals that we should all be taught, but are very often forgotten. And because it's not being represented in the world right now. So I think, writing this, what you wrote for your son that never got to read, I had somebody on this week whose daughter died of Pearson syndrome. It's at the time there was 1 in 10. There's only 1 in 100 in the world that have it. It's there is no cure for it, and of course they went through everything with it, of course, and then she was a wreck for about 18 months, and then one day she goes, "Okay, I have to surrender." She surrendered to God. God, there has to be a purpose behind the loss of my
yes,
child. And in
yes,
surrendering to God, she found a different purpose and the direction. She went on to being a nurse. She's now a school counselor. Everything that she went through with her daughter prepared her for this journey that she was meant to do. And her daughter is still with her. It's with her every single day, as your son is with you. And you're the extension of the work that you're doing in your life with the memory of your son, or the lessons that you never got to teach him. That there's always a reason, however hard it is,
yes,
because there's always a reason behind it, and that we never completely lose people. There's always that essence of them left behind that we take with us for a purpose.
yes. What I say is what we are is God's gift to us.
Yes.
What we become is our gift to God.
Yeah. Yeah. Back to the simplicity of life. We've overcomplicate things. We have so much technology that can be a great asset to us. It can really be used wisely, can really expand our horizons and everything else. Fantastic. But in many ways, we've let the technology speak for us, and we've lost our own voice. And we've given the power away to other people that, as you said, the dumbing down, that are talking to the people who will never ever take ownership of their own choices. It's the finger, it's your fault, your fault. There's 3 pointing back at you, mate. What are you going to do about it? You don't like what's happening out there. What are you doing to change it? And I don't mean take up arms. I mean,
Yes,
how are you going to be a part of the solution to the problem, or are you contributing to the problem? And that accountability and that responsibility for our own choices comes from that moral compass of be kind to others, be kind to self, be open and willing to listen and learn. Don't assume. Have those basic things called manners, respect, and let that be your foundation in everything you do in life.
yes. And one of the other ways I'll say it is smart people learn from their experience.
Yes,
Brilliant people learn from the experience of others.
yes,
Through your program, books like
yeah,
this, other venues, there's experiences that we can all learn from.
exactly. Be willing to learn. My motto on this is listen, learn, and apply. Right? Because there's always something from the show that you've listened to, that you've learned, and that you know that you could apply to your life to make it better.
Well, and the other thing, it only takes one lesson.
Yes,
The late Supreme Court Justice in the U.S., Oliver Wendell Holmes, said, "A man's mind, once expanded by a new idea, can never return to its previous place."
absolutely not.
So one idea can be life changing.
Absolutely. As you know, however devastating is a loss. It's a loss, it's a personal loss, it's a very important loss, but at the same time, what is the gain? That's the journey. That was your journey. What was the gain? Right? And this is how you're keeping him not only alive, but those lessons now that you didn't get to give to him, you're giving to others that probably in the back of their mind they know, But because of society's expectation, dictation, and the anger and the angst out there, they've forgotten. And they
Yeah.
just need to be reminded of, reset down to those
Yes.
fundamentals so that they
Yes.
can walk that path in common sense.
Yes. And I've been so blessed because so many people have used this volume as gifts
Mm,
for baby showers, for
yeah.
new parents, for graduation gifts,
Mhm.
trying to spread this word and get people to look at the ideas and impact people where they are today as early as possible.
Exactly. That's the thing. And the thing is, a dozen people are going to read it in a different way. And the gift of what they're going to get from it is going to be different to the next person because it's the gift of what they need right now. It's what
Yes.
they read right now. And that's why it's a gift that keeps on giving. So
Yes.
talking about the gift, how can they get hold of this book? And of course, you've got all of your books out there as well, which they can get. There's numerous of them. So
Thank you for asking. All 10 books are available at Amazon, including Kindle and audio on several. The audio on this volume will be out in the next month. richardbattle.com. You can go there for all books. All books at richardbattle.com are signed. If you would like to gift something for someone, order online and then email me, richard@richardbattle.com, and I'm happy to inscribe. And so I've had people order volumes or
mm,
quantities of books for gifts and
yes.
send me a list of people to inscribe it to. And we're happy to do that. Any way we can be of help to anyone, please uh, communicate to me, and we're happy to help in any way.
A book is a book that keeps on giving. Even if it's on your bookshelf and you pick it up one day and you just open it up and you read that paragraph of that page, you go, that was what I needed today,
Yes,
right? Or you
yes.
read it again in a different light, from a different perspective, at a different stage in your life, and it speaks to you in a different way,
Well, I
right?
have books that are dog-eared that I go back to.
Yeah,
I have articles.
yes,
So yes, I research and go back to things from many years sometimes to help
yes.
me where I'm at.
Good wisdom never dies. It's just applied differently. That's all.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for being back here with us again. I look forward to either the next book or the next journey with you when you come back with us. And
Well,
you always share so much wonderful wisdom and love. So thank you.
it's always my pleasure, and we just say God bless you, your program, and your listeners.
Thank you very much. Folks, remember that we need to go back and reset down to those fundamentals, and that one man's loss and the gift that he didn't get to give to his son, he's now giving to us. And that reminder of really where the core of life is and what we can teach our children and what the compass that we can live by really will set us right on the path that we take in life. So until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tab at the top there and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration, it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.